Jake wasn't expecting his Saturday to be anything other than average. He had planned to spend the day lounging around, eating too many tacos, and possibly binge-watching something ridiculous on TV. But life had other plans. The first sign something was off was the strange sound, a low hum that started in the distance. At first, he thought it was just a plane, maybe a helicopter. But then the sound got louder, like something was getting closer, closer than anything should be. His mind raced as he stood up, wiping taco sauce off his chin. When he looked up, his eyes widened. A silver ship was hovering above his backyard, glowing faintly like it was made of the stars themselves. Jake froze, taco in hand. There was no way this was happening. He glanced around, half expecting a hidden camera crew to jump out and laugh. But there was no hidden camera, no joke. The ship was real. As if on cue, a hatch opened at the bottom of the ship, and a figure stepped out. Jake's jaw nearly hit the grass. She was tall, way taller than him, with smooth, silver skin that shimmered under the sunlight. Her eyes were wide and filled with 1,000 stars, glowing faintly like a nebula trapped in her irises. Her hair, if you could call it that, was like flowing tendrils of light, catching the sun and making her look even more otherworldly. Her voice was soft, melodic, almost like music. As she spoke, "I come to study emotion." Jake blinked, taco still dangling from his hand, completely unsure of what he was hearing. "Excuse me," he asked, feeling like a fool. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes studying him intently, her gaze so curious it made Jake feel like a science experiment. "Emotion. Specifically, love. I will learn it by your example." He couldn't stop himself from laughing nervously. "What? What kind of study is that?" Her gaze never wavered. "You will demonstrate." Jake felt his brain scrambling for words. This couldn't be real. There was no way a gorgeous alien woman was standing in his backyard asking him to demonstrate love like it was a science project. "I'm not exactly prepared for that," he stammered. He motioned to himself, boxers with little rocket ships, messy hair, and half a taco in his hand. "I mean, I'm not even wearing pants." The alien woman blinked at him, clearly confused. "Is this part of the human ritual?" Jake nearly choked on his taco. Not really, but it could be, I guess. I mean, who am I to judge your, intergalactic cultural practices?" The woman's expression softened as if she was processing his words. She raised one eyebrow, her curiosity only growing. "This is love." Jake snorted. "No, no, love isn't about the weird pants or weird taco situations. It's more about connection, you know." He floundered for a second, trying to pull himself together. "It's about two people sharing something, getting close." She nodded slowly, still processing. "I see. I must observe more. I will stay. Teach me, human." Jake's heart did a weird little flip. Stay. She wanted to stay. This wasn't just some weird encounter. It was a full-blown, real-life alien showing up on his doorstep asking him to teach her about love. He stared at her, unsure of what to do, but somehow, he felt this weird sense of adventure bubbling up inside him. Sure, it was insane, but when was the last time his life had been anything but boring? "Well," he said, slowly lowering the taco, "I guess we should start with dinner. Love is really complicated and it takes time to understand. But we can start with something simple like food. You know, humans like to eat together." Her eyes lit up. "I will observe, I will eat also." Jake rubbed his face, trying to hold it together. "Right, so maybe let's skip the weird, glowing light thing for a second and just sit down. How about pizza? You can't go wrong with pizza, right?" She smiled, though it looked a little strange on her face, more like she was studying the concept than truly experiencing it. But Jake wasn't complaining. At least she was trying. "Pizza? I will try," she said, her voice soft and almost eager. As they walked toward his kitchen, Jake couldn't help but laugh under his breath. This was insane. A gorgeous, glowing alien woman who wanted to understand love, and he was the one who had to teach her. He didn't know whether to panic or just roll with it. But one thing was for sure. His boring Saturday was never going to be the same again. The pizza was surprisingly easy to get. Jake wasn't sure why he'd expected an alien to have a complicated taste in food. He figured she might ask for something bizarre like moon cheese or a starfruit, but instead, she seemed more interested in the simple joys of greasy, cheesy pizza. Lorana, the glowing silver-skinned alien, sat across from him at the table, her glowing eyes scanning every inch of the pizza like it was an ancient relic. Jake watched her curiously. She had an air of grace, like everything she did was being calculated and recorded, but there was something so endearing about it. "What is this food called again?" she asked, her voice soft, like she was afraid of disturbing the pizza itself. "Pizza," Jake said, taking a bite. "It's kind of a human classic. You're gonna love it." Lorana picked up a slice slowly, like she was handling a rare artifact. She sniffed it, then took a tiny, hesitant bite. Jake couldn't help but smile as her eyes lit up. "This tastes like the warmth of 1,000 suns," she said, her voice full of wonder. Jake nearly choked on his own bite of pizza. He hadn't expected that response. "I mean, yeah, I guess that's one way to put it." Lorana was so serious, though, as if she was cataloging the flavor in her mind. "So, food is a part of this love you mentioned." Jake laughed. No, it's just pizza. But yeah, sharing a meal with someone can definitely bring people closer. It's kind of like a bonding thing." Lorana nodded, looking thoughtful. "Bonding, that's the word I need. Bonding means connection." "Yeah," Jake said, his eyes meeting hers. "It's the stuff that ties you to someone, makes you feel like you're part of their world." For a moment they both just sat there, the air between them thick with something that felt almost real. Lorana took another bite of pizza, but this time she seemed lost in thought. Jake had always been a bit of a loner. He had friends, sure, but nothing that felt truly deep. When he looked at Lorana, all shiny and full of curiosity, he realized how little he understood about the things he thought he knew. Love, connection. Maybe he'd never really felt it the way she was about to. "So what else do humans do when they feel this? Bond?" Lorana asked, her voice gentle, almost shy now. Jake thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, some people hold hands, they hug, they say stuff like 'I love you,' but mostly, they just spend time together. You know, the little things that show you care." Lorana's eyes narrowed as she processed this. "Time together," she repeated. "This love thing, it's not just about words." "Nope," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "It's about actions. It's about what you do to show someone they matter to you without needing to say it all the time." She seemed to mull this over, nodding slowly. "Actions like sharing food." Jake smiled, feeling a little lighter. "Exactly. It's all about the little things, like when someone remembers your favorite pizza topping." Lorana's face brightened, and for a second she looked almost human. "I will learn this, Jake. I will learn love." Her words made something twist in his chest. It was a strange feeling, but it felt good. She was here, trying to understand something so personal, so human, and somehow, she was making him feel like maybe he understood it a little better, too. Later that night, they sat outside under the stars, sharing the last few slices of pizza. Lorana had quieted down a bit, her gaze turned upward, the soft glow of her skin blending with the night sky. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't weird. It felt comfortable. "You know," Jake said, breaking the silence, "the stars look way cooler from the other side of the galaxy." Lorana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the night sky. "Are you telling me you've seen the stars?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of playfulness. He chuckled. "Nope, but if you're offering a ride, I wouldn't say no." She laughed, a sound that was both light and deep. "I would take you," she said, "but I am still learning how to love." Jake smiled softly. "Well, if it's any consolation, I think you're already getting pretty good at it." Lorana looked at him, her expression serious again. "You are a complicated species, Jake, but I am learning. I will keep learning until I understand it fully. Jake's heart did a funny little flip. No pressure, but I think you're already on the right track. They sat in silence for a while, just looking at the stars, neither of them saying anything but somehow feeling more connected than ever. The night was quiet, but it felt full of promise, full of something new and uncertain but also thrilling. Jake didn't know where this whole thing with Lorana was going, but as he looked over at her, the glowing, mysterious alien who had just started to understand what love really was, he realized one thing for sure. He was ready for whatever came next. Jake hadn't really planned for any of this. One minute, he was eating pizza with an alien in his living room, and the next, he was learning what it felt like to have his heart beat out of his chest whenever she looked at him. Lorana was sitting across from him again, studying him like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. It was still a little strange knowing that she wasn't human, that she was here to study love, but somehow it didn't feel weird anymore. It just felt normal. They'd spent the last few days together, mostly talking, getting to know each other. Lorana had been eager to learn everything, the way humans expressed emotions, how we showed affection, and the words we used when we were close to someone. She was good at it, not in the way a human might be, of course. Her words were a little off sometimes, and she still had trouble understanding the nuances of sarcasm, but there was a sincerity in everything she did. She wasn't just observing love like an experiment, she was trying to understand it. And for the first time in his life, Jake was starting to feel like maybe he was learning something too. Tonight, though, things felt different. Lorana had been quieter than usual, her attention focused on something that Jake couldn't quite place. They were sitting outside again, the night air cool against their skin. The stars glittered overhead, and for a moment, Jake let himself imagine that they weren't so far away, that Lorana wasn't from some distant corner of the galaxy. "You're quiet tonight," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. He could feel the tension in the air, like there was something unspoken between them. Lorana's gaze flickered to him. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but then she hesitated. "Jake, I think I understand it now." He raised an eyebrow. "Understand what?" "Love," she said, her voice soft but certain. "I understand the feeling, the connection, the warmth that comes from being close to someone. You make me feel it." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to say. The words were there, but they felt heavy. How could he explain that what she was feeling was real, that what he was feeling was real too? "You're really starting to get it, huh?" he asked, his voice a little rougher than he intended. Lorana nodded, her eyes locking onto his. "I want to know more. I want to experience more." Before Jake could respond, she shifted closer. He wasn't sure when it happened, when they'd closed the distance between them. But now she was right there, close enough that he could feel her warmth, even through the glow of her skin. There was a brief moment of silence. The world seemed to hold its breath. He could hear his own pulse racing in his ears. He swallowed, unsure of what was happening but knowing something was. Lorana leaned in slowly, her expression serious, and Jake's stomach did a strange flip. She was so close now, her eyes so wide and trusting. And just as he thought she might kiss him, just as he thought she might finally close that distance, something went wrong. The translator on her neck suddenly beeped, the robotic voice filling the silence. "Initiating reproductive ACTIONS." Jake froze, his face turned bright red. It wasn't the translation that startled him, it was the timing. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. Reproductive actions. Seriously. Was this some kind of alien misunderstanding? He wanted to laugh, but all he could do was choke on his own embarrassment. I'm sorry," Lorana said, her eyes wide with confusion. "The translator, it misinterpreted. I did not mean to." Jake stood up quickly, his hands raised. No, it's fine, it's just a misunderstanding." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not exactly ready for, reproductive actions right now." Lorana's face turned an interesting shade of blue. I do not understand. I thought I had learned enough. Jake tried to keep it together, but the whole situation was just too ridiculous. He let out a nervous laugh, sitting back down. Look, it's not you, okay? It's just, well, I wasn't expecting that. You know, things like kisses, they're complicated. Her expression softened, but she still seemed a little confused. I see. Kisses are complicated. Jake couldn't help but smile. Yeah, and maybe we should just start with holding hands. Lorana's eyes lit up, and she nodded quickly. Holding hands, she repeated, as though she just unlocked a new level of human behavior. Yeah, Jake said, feeling a wave of warmth rush through him. Holding hands, we can try that first. Lorana extended her hand to him, her fingers glowing faintly. Jake took it, the simple touch feeling more intimate than he expected. It was like there was a spark, a connection between them that he couldn't explain. For a moment they just sat there, hands intertwined. The night stretched out before them like an endless promise. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't a kiss, but it felt real, and for Jake that was enough. Jake's life had never felt this strange, or this alive. Since Lorana had landed in his backyard, everything had shifted. What was once ordinary was now filled with wonder and chaos. They'd spent days together, and though he was still trying to wrap his mind around the idea of an alien studying love, he couldn't help but be fascinated by her. But now, in the midst of all the wonder, trouble was brewing. It started as a small blip, a weird, almost imperceptible hum coming from the ship. Jake had ignored it at first, thinking it was just part of Lorana's alien tech, but then it became impossible to ignore. One evening, they were sitting together on his porch, sharing a quiet moment as Lorana asked him yet another question about how humans express affection. What does it mean when a human gives another human a gift? She asked, her eyes glowing with interest. Jake smiled, trying to think of an answer. It's a way to show that you care, to say I'm thinking of you. She tilted her head. I see, so it's an action that confirms the connection, much like the hand holding. Exactly, Jake said. I think you're really starting to get this. Lorana's eyes softened, and for a moment he could have sworn she was looking at him with more than just curiosity. But before he could say anything, the hum from the ship grew louder, turning into a low, vibrating pulse that made the ground tremble beneath them. What is that? Jake asked, sitting up straighter. Lorana stood immediately, her gaze sharp and focused. Something is wrong, the ship. Before she could finish, a flash of light streaked across the sky. The sound of crashing meteorites echoed in the distance, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. The ship's systems were clearly failing. It's coming closer, Lorana muttered. I must. But Jake didn't wait for her to finish. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the ship. We need to get to it before. A sharp, sudden explosion shook the air, and the ground beneath their feet cracked. Jake's world spun as he was thrown to the ground. Jake, Lorana cried, but the sound of the blast drowned out everything else. His head spun as he tried to sit up. He could hear Lorana's voice, frantic and terrified, calling his name. He shook his head, struggling to focus. There were flames now, licking up from the wreckage of the ship, and the air smelled of burning metal. Lorana was beside him in an instant, her hand on his arm. You are hurt, she said, her voice panicked, her silver skin glowing brighter in the dimming light. I'm fine, Jake said, though his body screamed otherwise. His arm throbbed painfully, but he pushed the pain aside, focusing on her. What about you? She was trembling, her usual calm demeanor cracking for the first time since they met. The ship is critical. We cannot leave without it. Jake's heart raced. Wait, what? You're telling me we're stuck out here? Lorana didn't answer at first. Her eyes scanned the wreckage, calculating, processing, but then she looked at him with a soft, almost vulnerable expression. I was not prepared for this. Jake's mind raced, but he couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. Look, I don't know how this works for aliens, but I'm not going to let you down. We'll figure this out together, okay? Lorana's eyes met his, a mixture of gratitude and something else flickering in her gaze. Together, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. The words hung between them, and for the first time, Jake felt the weight of the connection between them, stronger now than ever. It wasn't just the things they had in common or the fact that she was trying to understand something as human as love. It was something deeper, something undeniable. As they approached the wreckage, Lorana seemed to gather herself. Her body glowed more intensely, and her movements became precise, each one calculated to fix what was broken. Jake stood by, trying to help in any way he could, but he was at a loss. I can fix this, Lorana said, her voice full of determination. I just need a few more moments. Stay with me. Jake nodded. I'm not going anywhere. The seconds stretched into minutes. Jake could see the way Lorana's hands moved over the ship's damaged components, her focus unwavering. But it wasn't just her intelligence or her alien abilities that amazed him in that moment. It was the trust she had in him. The way she asked for his presence as if he was a part of the solution. He wanted to do more. He wanted to fix everything for her to keep her safe. As she worked, the sky above them began to clear. The meteors had stopped, and the stars began to reappear. The moment felt oddly peaceful in the midst of all the chaos. Jake glanced over at Lorana, her glowing form bathed in the soft starlight. She looked so fragile in that moment, not just an alien, not just a visitor from another world, but someone who had opened herself up to something she didn't fully understand. He reached out and touched her shoulder gently. I'm here, he said softly. We'll make it through this, together. For the first time, Lorana gave him a smile that wasn't about learning or observation. It was a smile of pure, raw gratitude. And in that moment, Jake knew that whatever happened next, whether the ship would be fixed or whether they'd have to face more dangers, he would be there for her. Always. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about something deeper, something stronger. And as they both looked up at the night sky, Jake couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the edge of something extraordinary. The night had turned quiet again. After the chaos of the crash and the near miss with the meteors, the world around Jake and Lorana was still. The sky had finally cleared, revealing stars that looked like glitter scattered across black velvet. But the calmness in the air only made the situation feel more real. They were stranded on a barren moon, and Lorana's ship, the one that had brought her here, was in pieces. It wasn't the first time Jake had been in trouble, but this was different. He wasn't just trying to fix a broken pipe or a dead battery. This was life-or-death stuff. And yet, with Lorana by his side, somehow it felt like they could still make it. I'm sorry, Lorana said suddenly, her voice breaking through the silence. Jake turned to look at her. She was crouched beside the wreckage of her ship, her silver skin glowing softly in the moonlight. The sight of her working so diligently, her brow furrowed in concentration, made something stir in Jake's chest. She wasn't just some alien trying to figure out the human concept of love anymore. She was someone who had put her trust in him, someone who had shown vulnerability. He walked over, kneeling beside her. What are you sorry for? Lorana hesitated, clearly unsure of how to put her feelings into words. I failed you. I couldn't protect you from the storm. I couldn't keep us safe. Her voice wavered, and Jake noticed the slight tremble in her hands as she touched the damaged equipment. Jake shook his head quickly. Lorana, no, you've done more than enough. We're both here. We're safe. He reached out, brushing his hand over hers, and she looked up at him, surprised by the contact. I don't understand why you're not angry, she said, her voice soft, almost like she was searching for answers. Why aren't you upset that we're stuck here, that your life is in danger? Jake smiled, the warmth spreading through him as he held her gaze. Maybe because I'm not alone. If you weren't here, I'd be scared, but with you, I don't know, I feel like we can make it through anything. Lorana's eyes widened, her expression unreadable for a moment. and then almost shyly she lowered her gaze. "You don't understand. I've never cared for anyone before, not like this." Jake's heart skipped a beat. There was that word again, care, Lorana. "I didn't know that humans could make me feel this way," she continued, cutting him off, her voice quieter now. "I didn't expect to feel so connected to you, to care." She looked up at him then, her silver eyes full of something Jake had never seen in her before, fear. "What if you don't feel the same? What if I'm wrong?" Jake didn't even have to think. He reached out, pulling her gently toward him. The simple gesture felt natural, like it was the only thing he'd ever wanted to do. His heart was racing, but when he looked at her, it all seemed to slow down. "I feel the same way," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what this is or how it works, but I care about you too, more than I've cared about anyone, more than I ever thought I could." For a moment, Lorana just stared at him, as though she couldn't quite comprehend his words. But then, slowly, her expression softened. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "I think I understand now," she whispered, her hand trembling as it reached up to touch his cheek. "Love isn't just a concept to study. It's something real, something that exists between two people." Jake's breath caught in his throat as she moved closer. The world around them seemed to fade away. The only thing that mattered was the space between them. "You're right," he said, his voice low. "It's not just something you learn, it's something you feel." And then, without thinking, he closed the distance between them, pressing his lips gently against hers. It was nothing like the awkwardness of their first almost kiss. It was simple, slow, and somehow perfect. She responded almost immediately, her warmth mixing with his, as though this was something they had both been waiting for without even knowing it. The kiss was tender, full of unspoken promises, and Jake felt something inside him that he hadn't felt in years. It was a connection, a bond that was deeper than anything he had ever known. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Jake smiled, his hand still resting on her shoulders. "You know," he said, laughing softly, "I think we just figured out how to love after all." Lorana looked up at him, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dark. "I think you're right, and I'm not afraid anymore." Jake grinned, the weight of everything they had been through settling into the background as something new and beautiful began to grow between them. "Good, because whatever happens next, I'm with you." And as they stood there together, surrounded by the wreckage of the ship and the vast emptiness of the moon, Jake knew that this was just the beginning. The beginning of something he couldn't explain, but didn't need to. Because with Lorana by his side, he knew he'd never have to face anything alone again. Together they would figure it out. Together they would survive. It had been 2 days since the crash, and Jake was starting to lose track of time. The barren moon they were stranded on was cold at night and scorching hot during the day. The only comfort he had was Lorana, who seemed to be handling everything with a calm that both amazed and terrified him. Her alien technology had managed to keep them alive, for now. But there was only so much she could do with the limited resources they had. The ship's systems were damaged beyond repair, and though Lorana had been working tirelessly to fix them, every time Jake thought they were close to a solution, something else would break. Still, she never seemed to lose hope, and somehow her unshakable determination made him believe too. "We can make it," Jake said one evening, sitting beside her as they watched the stars. "We're so close, I can feel it." Lorana didn't look at him. Her attention was fixed on the control panel she was working on, her hands moving gracefully over the alien technology. "I'm trying to establish a signal. I must contact my people. They can help us." Jake nodded, though he could feel the anxiety creeping up in his chest. What if they didn't find them? What if they were stranded here forever? But he knew better than to voice his fears, not when Lorana was so focused and determined. He had to trust her. "I'll be fine," she added, as if reading his mind. "My people will find us, I just need time." "I know you'll figure it out," Jake said, giving her a warm smile. "You've done more than enough already. You've kept us alive this long." Lorana's gaze flickered to him, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. "I could not do this without you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You've shown me something I didn't understand. Love." Jake's heart swelled at her words. He wasn't sure what he had expected when she first arrived, maybe curiosity, maybe some kind of alien experiment. But this was something real, something that felt like it was his, too. Before he could respond, a sudden beeping interrupted their quiet moment. The ship's control panel flickered, and Lorana straightened up, her eyes widening. "I did it," she said, her voice full of wonder. "I've established a connection. They're coming." Jake's heart raced. They're coming. It felt too good to be true, but Lorana's confidence made him believe it. Before they could celebrate, the ship's door suddenly hissed open, and Lorana's people, a group of sleek, silver-skinned beings, stepped through the threshold. They moved gracefully, their presence as commanding as it was alien. Lorana stood up quickly, her eyes meeting theirs. "I've made contact. We are safe now." The aliens didn't waste time with pleasantries. They immediately turned to the ship systems, scanning the damage with cold efficiency. But as Lorana moved to join them, one of the aliens, a tall, stern-looking woman, stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Jake. "You are the human," the woman said, her voice firm but not unkind. Jake nodded, unsure of what to say. "Yeah, I'm Jake." The woman studied him for a moment longer before nodding, as if satisfied. "You have assisted Lorana. She would not have survived without you." Jake was taken aback. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the woman said, her voice softening ever so slightly. "Not just anyone, you have. Taught her something she could not learn from us." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He had never seen Lorana in this light before, as someone who could be looked at with such reverence. But he knew one thing for sure. She had made him feel something he never expected, something he didn't understand at first but now couldn't imagine living without. Lorana returned to his side, her eyes locked onto his. "My people have offered to help us return to my home. We will be safe." But even as she spoke those words, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He had never felt so connected to her, so sure that they were meant to be together. But now, with her people here, the reality of their worlds clashing seemed more real than ever. "I don't know what comes next," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I don't want to lose this. Lose you." Lorana looked at him, her eyes softening with understanding. "You won't lose me, Jake." She placed a hand on his cheek, her touch gentle but firm. "You've shown me a kind of love I never knew existed. It's not about distance or time or where we come from. It's about what we feel." Jake swallowed, his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't just a momentary connection. This was something real, something worth fighting for. The sound of the ship's engines hummed in the distance, signaling their imminent departure. But as they both turned to look at the stars, Jake realized that the journey ahead, no matter how uncertain, was one he would take with her. Together always. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever comes next, we'll do it together." Lorana smiled, and for the first time since they met, her smile was filled with something that felt like home. "Together," she agreed. And with that, they stepped forward into the unknown, not as alien and human, but as two souls, bound by something stronger than either of them had ever imagined.